There are golf stories that feel bigger than a leaderboard, bigger than a scorecard, bigger than one tournament. And when Phil Mickelson's name suddenly became part of the conversation around a Masters he wouldn't even play, it hit differently. Because this wasn't just about a missing champion. This was about a presence, a voice, a player who, for so many fans, has always felt like part of Augusta's heartbeat. And then, just like that, he was gone from the field. No dramatic build-up, no roaring walk-up 18, no charge through amen corner. Just questions. A lot of them. Why now? Why this Masters? And what did it really mean when Phil finally spoke? Because when a three-time Masters champion goes quiet, the silence says something. But when he breaks that silence, even briefly, golf fans listen in a completely different way. And by the end of this story, you realize this wasn't only about Phil missing Augusta in 2026. It was about what his absence revealed about golf, legacy, and the parts of this game that still matter most. And if you truly love golf, if this game means something to you, and if stories like this stay with you long after the final putt drops, then subscribe and become part of this golf family. Because this channel is for the fans who feel every major like it matters. Because let's be honest, Phil Mickelson and the Masters have never been a normal pairing. Some players show up at Augusta and try to survive it. Phil always looked like he was trying to solve it. Sometimes with genius, sometimes with chaos, sometimes with both on the same hole. That's why his history there never felt ordinary. It felt alive. You think about those towering shots, those aggressive decisions, that unmistakable swagger around a course that punishes hesitation. Phil at Augusta was never boring. Even when he wasn't at his peak, he still carried that feeling that something could happen. That's what made the 2026 Masters feel so strange the moment people realized he wouldn't be there. Not just because he's a former champion, not just because of the name, but because for a lot of golf fans, Phil belongs in that week. There are certain players who feel stitched into a tournament's identity, and Phil is one of them at Augusta. And this is where it started to feel heavier than a normal withdrawal. His public message was simple, respectful, brief. He said he would not play and would be away as his family dealt with a personal health matter. No drama, no performance. Just a reminder that sometimes even the loudest personalities in golf go quiet for reasons far more important than the sport itself. And for once, the conversation around Phil shifted away from controversy, away from rival tours, away from debate, and back towards something more human. But here's the part nobody talks about enough. When a player like Phil disappears from a major, fans don't just miss the golfer. They miss the emotion he brings with him. The Masters has always thrived on memory. That's part of what makes it different. And Phil has given that tournament too many unforgettable moments for his absence to feel small. Think about what Augusta has meant to him. 3 green jackets, a style of play built for risk and imagination. A place where his creativity made sense, where short game magic and fearless strategy could still beat perfect math. In an era where so much of elite golf feels measured, coached, optimized, Phil at the Masters always felt a little more instinctive, a little more dangerous, a little more fun. And that's why his absence didn't just create a gap in the field. It created an emotional gap in the tournament. Wait till you hear what happened next, because this is where the story stopped being only about not showing up. Even though Phil wasn't in the field, he still found a way to become part of the Masters conversation. While watching from away, he spoke publicly about Augusta's famous back 9 par 5s, arguing that the added length had taken away some of the excitement and intrigue, saying in effect that longer isn't always better. And whether you agreed with him or not, that comment hit a nerve for one reason. It sounded like Phil Mickelson still deeply cared. That's important, because there's a huge difference between criticism from the outside and criticism from someone whose identity is tied to the place. Phil wasn't talking like a random commentator. He was talking like a man who knows what it feels like to stand on those fairways with everything at stake. A man who knows what those decisions used to feel like, and what they mean to viewers who grew up believing the Masters back 9 is where golf becomes theater. Now, some fans heard that and thought, here we go again, classic Phil, always ready with an opinion. Others heard something else entirely. They heard a champion still emotionally connected to Augusta, still invested in the soul of the course, still seeing the tournament not as a brand, but as a living piece of golf history. And this is where everything changed, because suddenly the story wasn't only, Phil missed the Masters. The story became, What does Phil's absence reveal about how much this tournament needs its old storytellers? Golf is always moving forward. New stars arrive. New rivalries take over. New swings dominate. But majors aren't built only on who wins now. They're built on the ghosts, the legends, the recurring characters who give the stage its meaning. And Phil is one of those characters, whether people cheer him, criticize him, or do a little of both. That's the complicated truth about Phil Mickelson. He has been admired, doubted, celebrated, questioned, and analyzed from every angle. But through all of it, he has remained impossible to ignore. That's rare. Plenty of players become great. Very few become unforgettable. And if you're a real golf fan, you know unforgettable matters. Because think about the contrast. In 2023, Phil stunned people by making a run and finishing near the top at Augusta, when many had stopped expecting that kind of charge from him. That performance reminded everyone that on the right stage, with the right emotion, he could still make Sunday feel electric. Then the years after that brought a quieter reality. The kind every aging champion eventually faces. Fewer sparks. More questions. More signs that time is undefeated. That's golf. Beautiful and brutal. But here's the part that makes this story emotional. When a player's competitive future starts to narrow, every missed major feels bigger than one missed week. That's what fans were really reacting to. Not just the tournament on the calendar, but the feeling that these appearances are no longer endless. You start realizing there may only be so many more Aprils where names like Phil Mickelson are even remotely part of the Masters story as active players. And when one of those Aprils suddenly disappears, it makes you pause. It makes you remember. It makes you think about 2004, about 2006, about 2010, about the moments that made golf fans fall in love with nerve, imagination, and the kind of brilliance that didn't always look safe. Phil's Augusta legacy was never built on control alone. It was built on conviction. He made people believe bold golf could still win. That risk still had a place in a game increasingly obsessed with percentages. But here's the real twist in all of this. Sometimes a player's silence says more about his legacy than a full interview ever could. Phil didn't need a long speech. He didn't need a dramatic press conference. The fact that golf fans instantly felt something when he stepped away told you everything. Love him or not, his absence mattered. It changed the texture of Masters Week. It reminded people that majors are emotional experiences, not just sporting events. They are annual reunions with history. And when one of the central figures isn't there, the room feels different. That doesn't mean the Masters needed Phil to be great in 2026. Augusta will always be Augusta. The tournament will always find new heroes. That's part of its power. But it does mean that fans felt the missing piece. They felt what wasn't there. And honestly, that's one of the strongest signs of a true legacy. Because legacy isn't just trophies in a case. It's the feeling left behind when someone doesn't show up. And if you go even deeper, maybe that's why this story resonated beyond golf. For all the noise around the modern game, for all the arguments about tours and money and format and power, this moment cut through all of it. It reminded us that players are still people first. Families come first. Health comes first. Life can interrupt even the most iconic traditions. And when it does, the right response isn't gossip. It's perspective. That perspective is what makes this story land. Yes, there's curiosity. Yes, there's mystery. Yes, golf fans want answers. That's normal. But there's also maturity in recognizing that not every silence needs to be filled by speculation. Sometimes respect is the story. Sometimes restraint is the story. And sometimes the most powerful thing a fan can do is simply appreciate what a player has already given the game. And just when you think that's the end of it, one more layer appears. Phil's comment about Augusta's changes showed that even from a distance, he still sees the game through a competitor's eyes. He still cares about what makes golf exciting. He still sees drama where others see setup changes. He still talks like someone who understands that fans don't just come for score updates. They come for suspense, for possibility, for that feeling on the second 9 Sunday that something unbelievable could happen. That, in a strange way, may have been his real message. Not simply that he missed the Masters, but that the Masters still matters enough to him to speak on it at all. And for golf fans, that should mean something. Because this game doesn't only belong to the young stars climbing the mountain. It also belongs to the players who helped build the emotional shape of the mountain in the first place. Phil Mickelson is one of those players. Flawed? Sure. Complicated? Absolutely. But unforgettable. Without question. And that's why stories like this matter. Not because they feed drama, but because they remind us what golf really is at its best. It's memory. It's heartbreak. It's loyalty. It's brilliance that fades slowly, never all at once. It's the sound of a crowd rising for a player they've watched for decades. It's the ache of realizing some traditions don't last forever. And it's the hope that maybe, somewhere down the line, one more walk up Augusta's fairways is still waiting. So when Phil Mickelson broke his silence on missing the 2026 Masters, it wasn't just news. It was a reminder. A reminder that legends don't have to be in the field to still shape the feeling of a tournament. A reminder that golf fans carry history with them. And a reminder that sometimes the stories that stay with us most are the ones that leave us with questions, not answers. So let me ask you this. When you think of Phil Mickelson at the Masters, what moment comes to your mind first? Drop it in the comments, stay with this channel, and let's keep telling the stories that make golf feel bigger than a game.